Welcome to Guzzler.
Hello and welcome back to Guzzler Podcast. This is episode something, I don't know what it is. Episode
34.
There we go, 34. Today we're talking about, we were going to talk about birds, but I saw Seaspiracy last, I don't know when, the weekend when it came out, I don't know. And it annoyed me. So we're going to talk about that instead.
It annoyed you for different reasons that annoyed me, though.
We may be on the same page now.
Ooh.
We'll see.
Hello.
We'll see.
Hello, Sailor.
Guzzler Podcast.
So it was a documentary that's just come
Well, and just clarify, wait. That we're not just talking about Cspirity,
No.
we are going to talk about the ocean and the things that like are going wrong in the ocean and pollution
like
and the
the
environment
ecological
in general.
disaster that's going on in the ocean.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to talk about Atlantis as well, briefly.
That's not.
I don't.
It's not on topic.
I feel like it's... God,
Just
carry
briefly. Just brief.
This isn't
10, 15
This isn't
minutes. Just let me
Conspiracies
touch on it.
2, so no. Right, so Seaspiracy is a documentary that's just come out on Netflix, and it was aimed to shine a light on the horrific things that go on in the ocean, and the ecological disaster that it's bringing up. Now, I was furious when I first watched it. I was like, how can people be so cruel and evil? These bastards! I can't believe they've done this.
And now you think, fair play.
No, the things they
that what you
do.
Then he had a really nice bit of salmon. Honestly, it was just... Oh, mwah.
But I went online and I kind of fact checked the whole documentary, and I'm not gonna lie.
Told you.
It's not right. I'm gonna say that.
I told you.
But something you did say the other day, Declan, and it is a very, very good point. The audience that it is aimed at aren't going to go and fact check, so it's just meant to be that shock value. So you watch it and go, blimey, this is bad.
Mm-hmm.
We should do something about that, and then proceed by not doing anything about that, because that is the audience it is aimed to. Like this wasn't like a National Geographic like.
But this is...
You know.
What annoyed me about it is the fact that like the reality is bad as well. It's not like everything's fine and he's tried to make it sound like things are bad. Like things are bad, and you could just paint a very realistic picture, and people would also be like, "Oh, that's not good." Do you know what I mean? You don't have to make it that dramatic because things are bad anyway. You can be honest.
Yeah.
It was just weird.
So they go over some facts in the things. And I'm going to go for a few throughout the episode. I want to start talking about Bycatch.
Yeah. I learned about Bycatch yesterday.
Right?
Funny enough.
I can't believe the most shocking thing for me from Seaspiracy was that people didn't know what Bycatch was. I couldn't believe it.
I didn't know
I just thought everyone knew about Bycatch. Because surely you... Right, I can talk to Lou about it. So you've never heard of Bycatch?
No.
Surely, though,
fine,
when you imagined them chucking like
massive
a
fishing net in.
kilometre by kilometre net into the ocean,
What I've done,
you imagined
I've
them
completely
just catching...
What I mean is, I should have probably clarified. I knew what Bycatch was. I didn't know it was called Bycatch.
Right. So you knew that the practice
clarifies
existed, but you didn't know...
Yeah, I knew that that was a thing. Also, very regularly, my dad watches a lot of fishing programs. Not the same sort of fishing programs as this. He watches like a couple of like family-owned fishing boats go out in
Robson
Cornwall
Green.
to get like that. But also like a couple of like family-owned ones,
Mortimer and
especially around
Whitehouse.
Brexit. Yeah, exactly. We used to watch a couple of them. But those sort of fishermen who are getting a few cod off the coast of Cornwall or the North Sea is sustainable, and it's not to the same effect as them doing what they're doing in this show, is it? In this film. Because
of course.
Okay.
Yeah, but so sorry, I didn't know what it was called Bycatch.
But a lot of people didn't. That's what surprised. Like a lot of people on Twitter were like they never knew that Bycatch was a thing. I just think, what did you imagine? You imagine them just putting a net in the water and then they just catch the fish they want.
One, like all tuna.
Like how is that
Genius.
possible? How could that ever be possible? That is the most insane net of all time.
Yeah.
I suppose. Also, have they not seen Nemo? In Nemo, there's when they do the net at the end.
That's a very good point. They all get caught, don't they? Loads of them.
They do.
Yeah,
so
that's very true.
On the documentary, it says 300,000 whales and dolphins are caught per year as a result of bycatch, right? Oceana, one of the...
Is that worldwide?
Yeah. Oceana, one of the charities they mention in the documentary, who are standing up for sea rights and stuff like that, said that 650,000 whales, dolphins and seals were caught per year during the 1990s, right? So it's already more. However, it does take into account seals, and it was about 30 years ago. And because
they used to catch birds as well, didn't they? Because the birds used to try and get the fish, and
they
they
catch
just
a lot of birds.
put in the birds.
So that kind of works out. So that one was fine. But then they said 30,000 sharks per hour are caught, which would work out to something like 286 million sharks per year. Oceana disputes this and said it's only 100 million sharks per year.
Still quite a lot of
to be
sharks.
fair.
It is a lot of sharks, to be fair. And then they go along and say that 250,000 turtles are caught in 1 year in the US alone as a result of bycatch. Now,
That's mad, isn't it?
globally, Oceana say that it's only 150 a day, which results in 54,750 per year. So they're well off on that one by a factor of 5.
Yeah. They used to, in the 90s, there was this thing called Tuna Safe, wasn't there? Which is where they put on the tin to say it was Tuna Safe, so that when they caught it, the nets would only be, they would have only caught tuna.
Yeah.
That's
when I looked into
the
this,
documentary, innit? Yeah.
Oh, is it? I don't know. When I looked into this, what it meant was that they didn't only catch tuna, it just meant that when they threw whatever was back in the water, it was still alive. Well, that's
Because it's
I don't know
not
what that's
like physically
promising me.
possible to only catch tuna, is it? Unless
No,
you do
but
like
you-
spear fishing or something, or you just
Yeah.
catch them with your hands.
noodling. But
Yeah,
you would
noodling.
think
Hello?
that the way it says Tuna Safe, that they only caught the tuna. But the fact is that like they're just chucking it back the live things.
But I think as long as everything gets back in alive, that's alright though, isn't it?
But you would assume they would do that anyway, right? You would assume they would do that anyway, and you wouldn't have to put Tuna Safe on a label to know that they're
I
throwing
think
back in a
people
live
assume
dolphin.
they do, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Instead of
realistically,
we'll stab the
they
dolphin
don't care.
first, then we'll chuck it back in the water.
Well, out of all the fish caught, 17 to 22% of everything we catch is chucked back in the sea.
Yeah.
Nearly a fifth.
The thing I found surprising as well is like all of the stuff they chuck back. Does none of that have any like value, or is it just like illegal? They're just not allowed to have it.
I think a bit of both.
Right.
One program I watched recently, they said that some of the British trawlers, I don't really want to say trawlers actually, just fishing boats, family-run fishing boats, they can only catch a certain amount of like cod or hake or something like that in their boats, and it's quite a small amount. Sometimes it's not worth actually going out to sea to get that small amount, but the European fishing boats can get like 8 times as much or something. Because they've got to come from further away. But in Britain, we can't get that. We're not actually allowed to take that much out of our own waters, which is really like it's quite mad, that, isn't it? And also with these Tuna Safe nets and things, sometimes they used to. I don't know. I tried to Google this and I couldn't actually find anything about this. WWF said that they'd make these nets which had holes that dolphins could get through to stop them being caught. But in my head, if a dolphin can get through a hole, so can a tuna. I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know how
Exactly.
that's possible.
The yes, they interview one of the guys from one of the safe companies in the documentary, didn't they? Dick?
Yeah. Dolphin Safe.
And they're like, yeah, and they're like, how can you confirm that your stuff's safe? And he's just like, I can't. He's like, once the boats are out at sea, that we can't, like, we send like invigilators. You know what I mean? We send people out every now and again to watch, but when they're on their own, we don't know what they do. And he was portrayed as like a villain, but whereas I feel like he's trying his best and he's just being as honest as he can be, and he's just saying, look, we've set up this company, we're trying, we do check every now and again, but realistically, when you've got thousands of boats and they're hundreds of miles out at sea, we don't know what they do.
Right, so he kicked up a fuss after this documentary came out because he was like,
I've been standing up for this guy.
a lot of the scenes.
Did they edit the interview though?
Yes. So basically,
It felt like they edited it massively.
He came out and said, that isn't the interview that we had. You took a lot of the things I said out of context. He said, he said, don't get me wrong, this was very much what it was like about 20 years ago, right? But since then, we've come a long way. He said, I'm not saying it's perfect and it works every time, but when we say dolphin safe tuna or dolphin safe cans, more often than not, they are dolphin safe, right? Even if a dolphin had been caught with bycatch, it's alive when they put it back in the water. So he did come out and say, like, yeah, it's not perfect, but unless you're willing to pay more for a certified can, because we have to put an invigilator on every single boat and make sure they're not getting bribed or killed, then you're going to have to fork out for that. And consumers just aren't willing to, because each can of tuna would end up costing like 20 quid or something ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
And he said it's just not realistic.
Can you eat dolphin?
I don't know, that's what I'm saying. Has anyone ever tried dolphin fin soup?
Not personally.
No, but like, have they tried? Because they keep chucking all these dead dolphins back. Just make some soup, mate.
I'm just wondering if you get like when we go fishing for dolphin, do we get tuna safe nets in the sense that like we're going to make sure that tuna don't get stuck in these nets?
You can eat dolphin.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
I know that pregnant women can't eat shark.
Is that true?
But they're
Yeah, it is actually true.
They can't eat loads of stuff. They can't. Pregnant women are useless, mate.
but dolphin.
Yeah, but it's just weird that shark is one of those things, isn't it? That's
it's weird,
strange.
yeah.
Dolphins are stupidly high in mercury, apparently, so you shouldn't eat them. But you can eat them.
They just got a lot of like liquid metal flowing through them.
Basically, yeah.
Oh, that's sick. Dolphins are cool, man.
Right. So next
Dolphins are the only other animal that rape, aren't they? Fun fact.
Yeah, because they have sex for pleasure.
Fun.
Because they have sex for pleasure, yeah.
There's another incredible documentary you want to watch. That's a woman who keeps a dolphin in her house, and she has to don't watch it, actually. I haven't seen it, but I've just seen a clip of it where she has to like pleasure the dolphin because he doesn't.
Does she have to pleasure the dolphin?
or it dies like ferrets.
Sounds like
She
a really
says she has to
poor
pleasure the
excuse, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Sounds like
I
that's
have
her
to pleasure
fetish.
him.
Yeah.
Right. And then it talks about the amount of fishing gear in the ocean. And it talks about how 46% of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is just fishing gear.
Blimey, man. I was going to say that it's 300 miles long.
Jesus.
That is
Great
long.
Pacific
See, we had a
Patch.
conversation about this, Declan, in the group chat. And my point was, he says to the woman in the interview, what makes up the majority of the garbage patch, yeah?
Mm.
And she says microplastics, and he looks at her like she's an absolute idiot, and he's like, well, that's not true, I've got a fact here, that's not true. If you Google it, it is true. She was talking about like quantity of things, right? Like what makes up the most of it in terms of like
by item.
out of the particulates, most of it is microplastics. He's talking about mass. 46% of the mass is fish. He didn't ask her that. He said to her what makes up the majority of it. She's well within her rights to say microplastics, and he just absolutely berates this woman. I just think that's just dodgy interviewing.
Yeah,
I just think that's horrible.
Now, 10% of all the ocean, all of them, not just the garbage patch, is plastic fishing gear, right? So they've blown the amount. 10% of all the trash, not 10% of the ocean, is fishing gear. That would be a lot.
To be fair though, I actually thought it'd be more than that.
Yeah.
Because like, it's crazy that we've managed to chuck so much other stuff in there that we've added
But
up to 90.
that's like full fishing gear. That's not broken down stuff. They can't estimate that.
Yeah.
But they've said that 70% of all the macroplastics by weight are fishing gear.
Yeah, exactly.
So garbage patches are made by things called gyres. I think that's how you pronounce it, and they like swirl and put the things into the things. And there's 6 major ones in the world. I think there's almost one in like every ocean, but the Great Pacific one is the biggest one. Now, you haven't seen a picture of it, you should definitely look at a picture because it's mad. And there was a program I saw years ago about the one near the Seychelles. There's like the Indian Ocean, I think, where people would just go out in their boats and they would just look through the stuff to like basically take home for like scrap and stuff like that. And that's mad though, that for some people around the world, these garbage patches are actually important for their lifestyle because it means that they can find stuff to sell. I think that's
the thing that
it's weird how we've come to terms with that.
The thing that confuses me, a lot of the plastic trash sits on the very top. Like the vast majority of all of the plastic trash in the ocean sits on
Scoop it out.
Yeah, and it all
Big bucket.
It all collects together. So why don't we just get a very big net with very, very tiny holes and just skim it across the top? per number of items, like physical items that you can count, the most frequent item in the ocean in terms of
Beyblades. Just full of Beyblades.
cigarette butts.
Really?
A quarter of all the plastic physical items you can count in the ocean are cigarette butts at 24.
Like smokers could be any worse.
Yeah.
That's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Scum.
When we went to Borneo, we went to the island of Mantanani. We done cleaned up one of the beaches, and it really was mad. There's about 30 of us with bags, and we had to just we must have filled up about 2 bags each along like a 100-meter stretch of beach. And when we finished, it was just
And that was just on a tiny island in the middle of Asia.
Full of rubbish.
Yeah.
And you get the next
I
morning.
aced every second of that.
You get the next morning, and it looks like we hadn't even bothered. Like there is no way on earth you could put a stop.
That's because I put it all back in the night.
Yeah, you just went and emptied all these bags. Yeah,
Just emptied all my bags.
there's no way you can stop that, because if there was 30 of us doing that just 100 metres off the beach, and the next morning it just didn't look like it had been touched.
No,
exactly.
That's crazy that we've gone past the point almost of no return. There is genuinely no way you can stop this, because, for example, Declan, I'm using as an example, you're vegan and stuff like that, and if you go, right, I'm going to stop these things, I'm not going to litter and stuff like that. Hopefully you don't litter anyway.
Yeah, every day, mate. I make it my life's mission to find at least one bird a day and put a plastic straw down their throat. I catch them out of the sky.
Looking at the pictures on the news alert. Looking at the pictures on the news recently, people don't really care about litter, do they? Because they've been trashing parks and stuff like that when they've been meeting up. But in general, not enough people around the world are going to change their ways to make a change.
No, of course not.
This is it.
That's the thing, though. I watched this, but am I going to stop chucking cigarette butts into the ocean? Probably not. I love it.
But
I don't even smoke. I just burn it down to the butt and just throw it in the ocean. I just love it. It's just, just makes me
I saw
happy.
a man the other day, and he was walking through town, and he found a used cigarette butt on the floor, and he picked it up and just lit it and just carried on smoking. And I think that man was an absolute
That man's
hero,
saving the planet.
He's recycling. In a pandemic as well. In a pandemic, he's putting his mouth on someone else's cigarette butt, and he's recycling. He deserves an award.
He's a hero.
Yeah.
Right, moving on. Now it talks about trawling damage. Massive nets with weights on. They skim across the bottom. Yeah, they skim across the bottom. And this guy was like, they destroy 3.8 billion acres of ocean land, if that makes sense, every year or something like that. Now, there's only 90 billion acres of ocean land we've got, right? So it ain't gonna last much longer.
Yeah.
20 years, 25 years, and then it's done. However, I had a bit of a look, and when
at the ocean floor,
and when the big trawlers come and skim across, it's called a pass, but only 6 to 41% of biomass are lost. So they're not killing everything, and they can pick, depending on the weight they have on, how much gets offed. So there's ones that don't go as deep into the sand, and they remove about 6% of the biomass. But then there's big ones that really dig into the ocean floor, and that can take up 41% of all of the biomass.
That's quite a lot.
This is just to get the fish at the bottom of the ocean. But yeah, these are tearing up the ocean floor and getting rid of the coral and stuff like that. WWF described it as it's the ocean equivalent of just clear cutting a forest.
Yeah.
And
but it's not, because things are still left.
But we do that. Sorry?
Yeah, but this is the thing, right? Because I was thinking, before I watched Seaspiracy, I was just thinking about fishing, and I was just thinking about fish farms, right? Because I was thinking that there's a reason that we have cows and stuff in a farm. We have them in an area, we grow them, and then we slaughter them. This is like if we just let our cows free roam, and then we just went in with a machine gun and just mowed down everything, just deer, anything that got in our way, because we wanted a cow.
Yeah.
It's mental.
But that's how they do.
I just think it's insane.
That's how the cattle farm does, innit? That's what...
You what, mate?
A lot of the loggers in the Amazon do it for cattle farming.
Yeah.
They just clear land for...
Yeah, exactly.
And that's
it's just insane. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just
See
for
why
beef.
you would just mow down a whole...
It's just for beef and dairy.
Well,
Yeah, the fish farm thing was quite interesting though, because like I say, I was thinking about fish farms. I know this is a bit ahead in the documentary, but like, fish farms just make sense in my head because you just got a lot of fish, the same fish, in an area, and you just grab them. But they were saying that what they feed them is more fish than the fish they're about to fish.
Oh.
Because they feed them like fish oil.
Yeah.
But like from more
and
fish than they're about to fish.
Fish.
Yeah. Why do they do that?
Because they're idiots.
Just get fish food.
Most of the fish, like salmon, they say in the documentary, eat algae to get the omega-3 oils. So why don't they just feed them algae? Because I don't like the taste of fish. I'm not eating it for the taste. I'm eating it for the health benefits. Right?
And in Borneo, we had to try and get rid of algae because you can't stop it growing.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway.
Very good point.
They
do like loads of algae farms and like kelp farms and stuff like that with like all the boards over the water and stuff like that. I think that's a good idea. But the problem is though, I don't think when we're doing this, when we're trawling, I don't think the problem is that kelp. Like we really make sure we get a kelp farm because the amount of bycatching we're doing with kelp.
But that confused me as well when they're on about like how much CO2 the ocean holds and how much oxygen it also produces. So the phytoplankton take in 25% of the carbon dioxide emitted, right? The trees take in another 25% and 50% sits in the atmosphere. They estimate that the oceans are going to take in a lot more by 2021. Don't know how they work that out. We're killing them.
It's true.
Now, oceans produce 50 to 70% of all the oxygen on Earth. Not trees. The ocean does. The phytoplankton. So why don't we just farm phytoplankton? Like, just
get rid of the
make
trees.
Loads.
Because... I'll tell you why, Declan. Because it won't make any money.
Yeah, but
because no one would do it. It is just a thing that would be good for the planet. That's why they won't do it.
It's a selfless task, isn't it? And we're not a selfless.
It's like planting trees. It's
well.
not hard for us to plant trees. It just costs money, and you don't get any money from it. So why would people do it?
Yeah, good shout. Anyway,
that is genuinely why.
Like an easy fix.
It's like, that's what's so annoying about all of this, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
there's probably there's loads of stuff you could do. It just doesn't work.
The thing is,
but the problem with that is that like there's billionaires around the world that could easily do
quite easily fix a lot.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the time as well. Yeah, go on, Lou.
So I just say that Kylie Jenner put something on the other day on Instagram, something about someone who needed an operation.
Her makeup artist.
Yeah, that was it. What was it? Something like 20 grand or something.
$60,000, and she donated $5,000 to it.
$5,000, and she said, "Come on, people, please
She's
donate,
a billionaire.
please donate." And she donated $5,000, and she's the youngest billionaire in the world. And I thought, why are you getting other people's to donate in the middle of a pandemic where people are struggling? When you given that, it's just petty change.
The thing is, the makeup artist's a millionaire as well.
Yeah.
That's what doesn't.
You guys watch Mr. Beast?
No.
I've seen some.
I know who he is, yeah, but I haven't watched him.
I just wanted to give him a shout out because he did that like planting trees thing. And like Elon Musk gave like $1 million, and he gave like $1 million, and they've planted like hundreds of thousands of trees. And the only reason Mr. Beast's YouTube's successful is because he just gives money away to people all the time. That's all
Same
he
as
does.
David Dobrik.
But what I was going to say was that like,
I was going to say that with that Mr. Beast thing, didn't him and Elon have like this war where like they would keep like donating like £1 more to try and get
like $1 more. Yeah.
But the weird thing about that is that like Mr. Beast is like this bloke, and Elon is a billionaire. He could have just lapped him with his donations.
I think the idea though is that like if you make it fun and you make it like a thing people talk about, then you'll get more money from other people.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
But yeah, the point. My point on this generally is that like I know people are like we should just stop eating fish and then everything will be solved. But like as a more structured like third world countries,
they need fish.
A lot of them depend on fishing. They need fish to survive, but also that's how they make their money, and that's also why we talk about all this Dolphin Safe stuff and that. A lot of these people can't afford to proper sift through their fish and save all of the animals and stuff because they're forced by their lives to fish and just chuck everything back and then fish again and just chuck everything back. Whatever dies doesn't matter. They need to, because they're making literally like pennies, literally pennies.
Well, this brings up the idea of sustainable fishing, which they start talking about towards the end of the documentary. And the guy ends up coming out and saying, there's no such thing as sustainable fishing. Now, this is the biggest statement that he made in the whole documentary.
I saw a lot of marine biologists were really annoyed about this on Twitter.
The UN have come out and said only 34.2% of all the fish we catch are unsustainable, right? So 66% of everything we already catch are sustainably caught. So you can't say that sustainable fishing doesn't happen. It literally is happening. Yes, not fully there, but of course it's happening.
Well, I said to you can't make that statement anyway without specifying more. It just annoyed me anyway that statement was ever said without specifying. I said to you, if I had like a lake in the back of my garden and it was just me eating fish every now and again and they were breeding, that's sustainable. You can't just say... I know I'm talking in a very loose, linguistic sense here, but it just annoyed me in general. If you're making a documentary about science, you have to be specific. The language was never specific. At one point, he was like, I can't remember if it was tuna or salmon, he was like, their populations are down to 3%.
Yeah.
Now, his graph showed 1970. I get that, but you have to say, you can never just say populations are down to 3%. From what? What do you mean? What are you talking about? You need to use specific language. That's the whole point of science. That's the whole purpose of it. It just bothered me, man.
Now, this is a study that was released in 2006 by a scientist called Worm. It was literally his last name, Worm.
Wow. They didn't get bread at school, did he?
Okay. We had a first name as well. It weren't just...
No, it's like Beyonce. Now, in 2009, same guy came out and went, yeah, that was a bit of an overestimation, to be fair. It's going to take a bit longer than that to clear out all the oceans.
Really?
Literally,
I feel like we could have told Worm
literally
that.
The same guy come out and was like, nah, that was wrong. Sorry, lads. But they took the 2006 study into account in the documentary.
Yep.
It's just cherry-picking science.
This is what I mean. It's just a dodgy use of... Like, my friend, I know my friend was being dramatic, but I think he did have a point. So his point was about the spy pen thing, right? And the documentary maker's like, oh, we have to use a spy pen because it's real dangerous in here. And then they cut to like a 30mm framed shot and they zoom and they pan. And it's like, well, you obviously weren't using a spy pen, were you? Spy pens are like 360 freaking whatever it's called. The point was that just like if you're not honest in any part of your filmmaking, the whole thing breaks down. Any part of your filmmaking at all, if you lie, why should we believe you for the rest of it?
Yeah.
You should be honest in every single aspect of it. It's like when he goes to the bit in Japan and he says that the secret police are after him. And then he just cuts to some random Chinese man.
Round the
or
corner.
Japanese man.
Who moves away
Yeah,
from
and
the
he goes,
camera.
this is the secret police. The Japanese secret police aren't very good at their job, are they? Considering you've just turned up and you've immediately pegged them. And then he's like, the Coast Guard are following me. And then he cuts to some boat in the sea that's going the other way. They're not following you. He's just lying. He is just lying.
Now, I wondered why he would just come out and lie, right? So I did some digging. Now, there's a company...
You went to meet his mum. You've been to his house.
There's a company that funded the production of this show, this documentary.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a company that produces vegan recipes, right? For a stupid amount of money. And if you go on the Cspirity website, you can have a look, and there is subscription notices to this very company on the Seaspiracy website. Now, the thing I found really ironic was that in the show, they talk about how charities like Oceana are exploiting the problem, trying to get donations and people to go a certain way, while exploiting the problem and trying to get people to donate and do a certain thing.
Exactly.
He hasn't solved it.
Because he also did another documentary.
They haven't solved the problem.
Declan. That's You've been like you created this into a conspiracy. That's why it's called Seaspiracy. You've done it.
I'm going to call this one Cspiracy.
Nice. The vegan secret police are on your tail, are
they?
Yeah, the Coast Guard are following you. But obviously they're on land, so they're on like a trailer of a jeep, but they're still in the sea boat. They're still in the
right. They can't see me from
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
but they're on the boat waiting until I
Oh yeah, they go the other way.
until I
mate,
get in the
but
water.
they're
That's what
following
they're
you.
there for. They're sitting on Stanton waiting for me to go to the beach.
The next time you get in water, you're gonna get messed up, mate.
Should we quickly talk about what we're drinking today?
Yes, yeah.
Go on then, Declan.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
You start, Declan.
No, I'm not drinking today.
Oh,
I've got things to do later. I couldn't
Fine,
risk going
fine.
through a bottle of wine.
we're drinking. How do you pronounce yourself?
You what, mate?
Stein Bruges
Beer.
beer.
Beer. Beer.
Thank you.
I forgot what we were talking about.
Bruges.
Stein Bruges.
It's from Belgium.
Steenbrugge.
Clearly from Bruges. And it even says underneath a Belgian Abbey beer. It says enriched with spices. I'll be honest, we had one the other day and it had coriander in it. I think this does have a little bit of coriander in it.
Why does it
doesn't
say? It says blonde.
Blonde,
Now
blonde.
I understand putting things in like multiple languages on things, but when it's spelt the same, just one's got an e on the end, one ain't. Just put blonde.
Blonde. In whichever
I know what you
one
mean.
of those languages, yeah, because we'll understand it.
In either of them. It's like when they put beer in English and German, but in German and in English they're spelt the exact same, except one has an I instead of an
Yeah.
e. But they're both pronounced beer. Just put either. I know what you
Yeah,
mean.
exactly.
I'll be like, oh, beer with an I must be wine.
This has cinnamon and clove in it. We'll talk about it at the end.
Clove.
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 What's clove?
I thought we were just going to keep going. Clove. It's, you put them in gammons, don't you? They're the little like black, they're like seeds, like they're quite hard. You pop them in like, you know.
Are they the ones where if it has 4 of them, it's good luck?
No, that's a shamrock.
Or a clover. I've got something to mention about small ocean things. There's a documentary on Netflix called Blackfish. It came out in about, I don't know, I'm going to guess like, I don't know.
2016 or something, wasn't it?
I don't know if it was earlier than that. I was say 2012. I was going to say it's made by a woman called Gabriella
2013.
Cowperthwaite or something like that. Got a strange surname, but nonetheless, it was about
Yeah.
keeping of whales in captivity.
It was made in 2013 by Gabriella Cowperthwaite.
Cowperthwaite, yeah, and it was.
You got it right, to be fair.
Got it
there.
Well
right.
done.
It was about keeping of killer whales and things in captivity. Probably the most famous ones are in SeaWorld in like Florida with Shamu and stuff like that. Now, a couple of years ago, probably about 5-6 years ago, there was one where one of the trainers was like dragged off of the performing thing and was taken under the water and was like thrown around for ages. And I think they got out, but then maybe a year after that, one was killed. And then there's a whale called write this down, called Tilikum. I think this one's in California, maybe. Yeah, Tilikum. Tilikum. Yeah. And in 1983, this whale was confined in a 20-foot by 30-foot pool overnight, every night.
What the fuck?
Yeah, in 20 by 30-foot pool. In 1991, Tilikum and 2 other orcas had attacked this trainer, and she just slipped into the pool. She assumed that she was just going to get out of it, but she was dragged under the water by one of the whales. She died. In 1999, Tilikum is actually in Orlando, Florida, so I've read on into my notes. An employee found someone who basically wandered into the park overnight, just wandered in out of hours, and they found him dead in the pool, and he'd been dragged under, and autopsy showed that he drowned, but there was just loads of bruises and cuts all over him where he'd been dragged around while he was dead as well. And the thing with that is, though, that like if you've broken into SeaWorld, probably don't climb into the
Killer whale enclosure. Yeah.
Easy option.
Yeah.
And then the third one was in 2010 when an employee who had been there for a long while, who had a good bond with the orcas, she was just forced under the water and it killed her. And Tilikum is still there now, this orca, because you can't just put it down because it's in its nature to do things like this.
You couldn't hunt in the wild though, could it?
No, exactly, and that's exactly the thing. But
Yeah.
the thing should then be they should just let him back into the wild. And so the fins of the orcas should obviously always go straight up. But when they're in captivity, they bend over, and the more they curl over, the more distressed they are. Until it comes to almost like Fibonacci spiral, like it's really distressed. To which, if they care about these things that much, they should just let them back into the wild. There's 70 killer whale trainer accidents There's been 70, in the last 2 decades, which is mad. And also, killer whales in the wild. Do you know how long killer whales live in the wild for?
Like 8 years.
Do you say 8?
80.
Oh, so yeah, the males live to about 80, but the females live to 100, which is a long while. But in captivity,
Nice.
they
Good
live
guess.
to 25 years.
There's a apparently blackfish is quite controversial as well, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Because they present that the whales are dangerous because they're in captivity,
yeah,
whereas realistically, they're killer whales and they're incredibly dangerous in the wild as well.
and one thing about the thing is that
I'm not saying the documentary's wrong. I'm just saying you can't be like, oh, she's distressed, she's hurt me. She's killers in her name.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's also links to the fact when people get wild cats and stuff as pets, when
Yeah, exactly.
it's in their nature to kill.
And you're like, oh, the cat's just you go the cat's just upset. So it's a lie, mate.
Yeah, it's in their
It's
nature.
what it does, isn't it?
But
Do you know what I mean?
in the trailer of Blackfish, if you watch the trailer, it makes it look like that we're the problem, not we, but the people who run it are the problem because they're keeping these killer whales. But then you watch the documentary and it does sort of put another spin on it where it feels like they're villainising the whales. Yeah, but it is in their nature.
Yeah, I think the other reason it's controversial apparently is because the people that made it used to work there, but they worked there 20 years ago, and a lot of them never actually worked with killer whales.
So it's
They worked with
getting a
dolphins.
vendetta against them.
Yeah, and it's it's that thing again where you worked there 20, 25 years ago. The world does change a lot quite quickly. Again, I'm not saying it's a good keeping killer whales in a tank that they're barely fit in. I do think is probably a bad thing.
Probably.
None of that sounds like a good idea, but
And as we said,
that doesn't mean the documentary's taken a non-biased stance,
we saw each other
because none of them ever do.
for the first time in months, and we was discussing this in preparation for this, and I said that when I went to Orlando in 2008, watched a show called Chamois Rocks, and it was doing flips and stuff in sync to music, and it was really great. It was like he was a rock star. It was like he was a celebrity, and it was phenomenal because I was 10 years old. And then when I went a couple of years ago, we did go and see the show, and I felt like my protest was that I sat there moodily and didn't clap because my girlfriend went to see the show, and that I went and I didn't clap because although it was impressive, and it was impressive that you can make a whale do that, I won't take that away from the trainers. That is impressive. However, we shouldn't be doing that to animals. We shouldn't be.
It's a weird one though, because in general, I think zoos in general do a lot of good
They do, yes.
for a lot of animals. Not all animals, and some of them they don't need to keep. In terms of conservation and breeding and stuff, a lot of zoos do a lot of good, and a lot of them do use the money to help fund wild animal stuff and to support wild animals as well.
And they do get a lot of bad press.
So zoos are a very weird sort of moral grey area.
Yeah.
They're a bit strange in that sort of regard.
I think they used to be a lot worse. Enclosures used to be a lot
definitely.
smaller. When you see the sort of comic depiction of lions in cages, it was a very small cage that it could barely fit in. But now they have acres and acres and acres worth of land that you drive through in your car instead of walking up to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
so they can
because-
browse and shit.
I think that's because when zoos were first made, it was we've got a lion. People need to see a lion because people don't go on holiday and people need to see what a lion looks like in the flesh. So they were kept in cages. Where now, it's sort of we know what lions look like and we have the TV and things, and it's easy to go and see a zoo. Blimey, around here, where we live, there's probably 5 or 6 easily accessible zoos within an hour and a half radius, while they're more for conservation now instead of just peering at a lion through.
Again, though, annoyingly, literally everything you can just be like, it's money in it. They know that they need to make it look like they're treating the animals nicely and have nice enclosures and make it have a warm, safe environment, because that's what the zoo people are going to go to.
Yeah.
There was
It's so hard to tell what intentions are pure and what aren't,
it is.
isn't it? It's really hard to tell.
Literally, the root cause of everything is corruption and money. You can trace almost all problems back to not having a solve. Most of the problems we have already have quite a very easy fix, right? But because it costs a little bit more money to fix it, especially in the short term. It will cost a lot of money to change the status quo and everything like that. They just don't do it. And it's easier for them to go on as it is now than it is to change. In the long run, it would probably be cheaper. But they don't want the expense now.
There was a programme on TV on Tuesday night, so not last night. Last week, I'll say. Well, it was on last night, actually. And it's also on next week, if you're interested as well, actually. It was Ross Kemp. It was looking at British tiger kings, but it wasn't just tigers. It was looking at wild animals that are kept in captivity in England. And if you've seen any Ross Kemp things before, like he's a hard guy. Like he goes and meets like some of the worst gangs in the world and stuff like that, and he's just like swagging about all hard. He was not hard in this show at all. He was absolutely terrified. Like when this bloke was like, just go sit in this cage of a lion, and he put this lion up these steps, and he was at the top of this, and he looked like the king. He was this massive lion, massive man, and he stood at the top, and he was so trained and stuff like that, and like did attempt to sit, and the cat would sit, but he sat at the top of this. Let's put Ross Kemp in this cage, and he was just like, no, like not for me at all. Like I'm terrified. And they even said to him, they're like, oh, you're meant to be hard, and he was like, nope, not now, I'm not, because these are animals that can kill and stuff like that. And then one bloke he lived at home, and basically whatever he wanted his mum would just get for him, and he had lions and all different sorts of animals. But then the next bloke you see, he had a zoo, but it wasn't in quotation marks, but it wasn't really for the public, it was just for him. But he had acres and acres and acres of land, and some of the animals that he held, they had just so much land to run around, so much land. It looked like he was actually really, really looking after these animals. However, he was just a rich millionaire, and he wasn't even opening this for a zoo. It was just for his own pleasure. It was like this idea of status and power, isn't it? That you've got lions in your back garden and crocodiles and stuff like that. Like that is mad. But then after the show,
would be pretty sick,
I looked at how much it would cost, because he said it's so easy to get these animals in England. So I looked at how much this cost, and I became obsessed with the idea that you can go on .gov website and you can get a wild animal license, just like that. And I was like, I'm going to have a look how much animals cost. £850, you can buy a baby panther in the UK. £850. For £4,000, you can buy a marsupial, like a little monkey, which means that for one monkey, I can get almost 5 panthers that I can just get from my back garden. You just need to get a license. That is it.
That's mental.
It's easy as that. And I put in on this one website, people just saying animals, cutest baby panthers, £850. I was scrolling down, and it comes up with like, if the panther's got a name, the price, and the species. And then there was one, it was just this like rooster in his back garden. It said no name, £20, and then under species it just put question marks. And I was like, who's selling this? And where have they found this rooster? Like, what do you mean question mark? Surely you know it's a rooster. Do you even own this thing, or have you just took a picture of a bird on the side of the road and gone, don't know what it is, I'll take it and I'll sell it?
Quickly, you spoke about the millionaire who had like the fields and stuff. The fact he's not opening it, that's what keeps intentions pure, right? Like non-profit stuff. Because like, even in Tiger King, Joe Exotic, I feel, started for the right reasons. At the start, he seems like he did just love tigers. But then money happened, and he realised he could make money, and then he became scum.
The last scene of Tiger King is where he looks at those two monkeys who are kept apart from each other, and he sends them away, and he said that when he went to visit them, they just ran into each other's arms, but they'd never actually met each other before, but it was just like they'd been united together. And he said that broke his heart, and that was a nice sort of way to end that series, because it sort of showed the fact that, like, in that moment when he was talking about
he realised that he'd slipped. Nice way to end the podcast out.
Cheers.
Just how's your beer?
Sadness. Honestly, I think it's horrible.
Yeah, I do.
I don't think it's very nice at all. I think it's one of the worst ones we've had from Beer 52.
Well, I say horrible. I think I'll give it a 2 out of 5. Probably less. 1.75. It tastes really I don't taste cinnamon or clove. I thought it was coriander, I'll be honest.
I don't know if mine's alright. It's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, it's doing things to me, mate. It's doing things to me. Horrible. Don't recommend it. Steen Bruges. Don't get it.
Alright, so that was our episode on how we're messing up the seas. We'll probably do one soon about messing up the land as well, because we're just horrific creatures. Next week, Louis, it's yours, isn't it?
Mine. I'm going to do... I'll I think I'm going to do just more about some, unless I come up with another idea between now and then, it's going to be just some things that have been in popular culture recently or in the news recently, similar to what we've done not so long ago, and we'll just have a bit of debate and a bit of discussion about them. Yeah.
Cool. Check out WGNR on Friday. That's also you, Lou?
That's me as well, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. You've got a week of Louis. So sorry. See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this Guzzler podcast.